In today's Necron Warrior Kitbash video, I'm going to show you how I magnetized these warriors into Lychguard and Praetorians with all the weapon options. And it's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, here we go. After a subscriber's request, I am converting Necron Warriors into Praetorians stroke Lychguard. Now, to be honest with you, I don't normally convert warriors into other units, and the reason for that, when I look at units which have been converted, you can always see that they are conversion stroke kitbashes, and I never think they look that great, which is why I haven't done them. However, as I said, I've had a request to do them, and to be fair, whilst maybe they don't look the greatest, they still do the job, especially if you have a lot of warriors on your hands and you want to do something with them. So let's get to it and convert these warriors. Now, for reference, I have already made a full magnetizing video on the original, the proper box set of Lychguard and Praetorians, where I've magnetized them into both units with all 4 weapon options, and I'll link that video for you in the description below. And of course, feel free to subscribe if you enjoy this video. Right, here we go. So I have 20 old school Necron Warriors. These are eBay rescued ones. They're all badly put together and badly painted, and I need to convert these into Lychguard. So the first thing I have to do, of course, is remove the paint. So I'm going to use BioStrip 20 to strip these miniatures. It's a fantastic product. It's odour free, it's not harmful to your skin, and it strips paint really quickly and easily. I know it's not available in all countries, but it's probably the best product I've seen in the UK. Now, I only just managed to get these miniatures in the pot. I kept them on their bases because sometimes this will actually strip the basing material off of the base as well. It really does depend on what the person before has used to glue these all together. However, the material didn't come off, but I did have some new bases anyway. So next I had to cut off the feet off of the bases they were on. I used a knife, and when needed, I used clippers. Now, it's fair to say these warriors were not in a good condition, especially their feet. The basing material seems to be glued all over the feet. They're just not very well put together, and some of the legs were broken as well. So in the end, I decided to select the best 10 warriors that I could from these, and I settled for 1 unit of 10. Even then, some of the 10 good warriors still had dodgy legs, so I had to cut some legs off the other models just so I could get 10 good warriors. The rest of the warriors just went into my spare bits box. Next, I got rid of the gun. I carefully cut the left arm off at the wrist. Then I cut off the gun, leaving the hand holding the gun handle. At this stage, I cleaned up all of the mould lines on the miniatures. So I decided I wanted to make these miniatures interchangeable between the 2 units and the loadouts. I had some void blades in my bits box, so this was a good starting point. I didn't have any spare dispersion shields. However, the void blades almost looked like shields, so I decided to make these interchangeable between the 2, and I would glue them into place on the left arm. Of course, if you have dispersion shields in your bits box, then you could magnetize these if you wanted to, or just glue them on if you're only making one option. I show you how to magnetize these shields in my video I was talking about earlier. The left arms are pretty varied, although I did cut off a couple of them and repositioned them so that I could make each model look different. Now, I didn't glue the blades in place yet. I wanted to sort out the right arm first. This would be the arm that would be the magnetized arm to have the different weapon options: the Hyperfade Sword, the War Sai, the Particle Caster, and the Rod of Covenant. I looked at the pieces I had and started brainstorming. First, the leftover gun. I knew it would be tough to have the weapons pointing upwards as if they were holding them, so I thought I would make the hand the actual weapon itself. In my head I'm thinking T-1000 style from Terminator 2. I would have to make sure I'd have enough room though with the shield in place, so I ripped off the right arm so that I could reposition it. All I would have to do is reshape the ball joint and drill a hole out in the shoulder joint. I then cut around the hand and reshaped it. My plan was to use the end of the Gauss flare as a connection point. I cut off the end and I had to reshape one side of it as it wasn't even. I used a file to flatten the end so I could get a nice good fixing. Okay, so now to the weapon options. I found 10 staff heads that I had previously not used, a perfect starting point. I had a good play with them to come up with a plan. I was thinking that maybe the staff could double up as a particle caster as well as the rod. Now, when I did my Leviathan warriors, I built them with Gauss Reapers, as all my other warriors had flayers. I currently have 140 warriors, so I don't plan on making any more. Looking at the new Gauss Flayer, I was wondering if I could use the green rod power piece as a staff somehow. After a little play, I thought it would definitely be doable. First, I cut off the front section as I was thinking this would make a good starting point for the weapons. The plan was to glue it to the end of the old Gauss Flayer front I had made, and this would be the magnetizing point for the different options. I then worked out the cutting point on the power rod and started cutting it. First at the back, and then cutting off the support bar on the side. After a little look, I knew I'd have to reshape it a little bit to get it to fit, but my plan was definitely doable. Next, I cut off the end sections of the staff heads to make them fit and to allow the magnets to go into place. I had to scrape some of the plastic off the inside of the end piece to make it fit, but only a little bit. Next, I carefully drilled some holes for the magnets to go into. First with a small drill piece. I was going to use 2 by 1mm N52 strength magnets, so I will go back to these little holes with a 2mm drill piece afterwards. The reason why I went with the small drill first is because it's easier to get the hole centered. First I drilled into the end piece that would be glued to the arm. I then drilled a hole in the end of the 2 staff heads. I cut off the tab at the front of the gun and used a knife to make a starting hole before drilling. Actually, if you're new to drilling small holes, then I would recommend you do this because it makes life easier. Once all the holes were drilled, I got that bigger drill piece and widened the holes ready for the magnets. Next, I glued the flayer front section to the right hand. I fiddled with it a bit to get it into place, making sure that it was pointing straight out. Then I put it in some blue tack and let it dry. I then superglued all of the magnets into place and made sure that all of the polarities were the correct way round, and then I let all the pieces dry. I then glued on the extra front section of the new Gauss Flayer onto the reversed section of the old Gauss Flayer on the arm. As that dried, I drilled out a hole in the armpit ready for gluing. However, I really wanted to add some extra details to this warrior body to make it look like a Praetorian stroke Lychguard. And looking at the original model, they needed something extra on the back. Luckily, I found these wraith heads I had left over from my Tomb Sentinel conversion, and I thought these would be perfect on the back of the warriors. After gluing, they looked much better. However, another key feature of the unit is the head crest. I didn't have enough original heads, I only had 2, so I had to come up with an alternative. I decided to have a think about the head crests, and in the meantime I glued some of the models to their bases. Okay, so now the arm is fully dry and I worked out the new pose for it and glued it into place. Again, making sure that the weapons would not interfere with the shield, but also not drooping down to hit the ground either. Right, they are glued into place and are fully dry, and it's time to take another look at the head crest. I went back to my Gauss flayers. I had lots of them as I had 2 Necron halves of the Leviathan box set, and I came to the conclusion that I could cut off the flayer blade and reshape it into a crest. This was actually pretty easy to do, and once glued into place, did the job nicely. The minis were almost done. I tested out the weapons. The Hyperphase sword looked cool. I didn't like the particle caster much, but the war scythe and the rod looked fine. I felt the particle caster was too big. In actual fact, the hand with nothing magnetized to it looked fine as a particle caster. Okay, so one last thing, tabards. The original unit comes with 2 tabard types. These ones I didn't use as I just didn't like them. To me, they look like Necron willies. I can't believe I said that. I only had 6 of them anyway, as I had used them in other conversions, so I needed a new plan. I found another set of 10 rod heads, so I went to work on making them into tabards. At first I was going to use the orb at the top, but in the end that was too big. I cut the side sections off first. I tested the orb at the top, but had to gradually trim the piece down, with some reshaping on the sides as well. I just gradually cut it away until I got a shape that I liked. I sliced out half of the back piece so that it would sit into the pelvis without sticking out too much. Once I had the piece done, I and ahed about cutting out the little section at the bottom or not. In the end, I did 5 with it cut out and 5 with it in place. And I'm going to use that to distinguish the unit when I split it from 10 into 2 units of 5. And that is it. All done. Here they are as Lychguard with the sword and board. Now you may notice I did actually use the 2 original Lychguard heads, 1 in each unit of 5. My other Lychguard units that I have 1 head with a little orb in the middle, so this helps them match into my original units. I know that they have void shields, but I think they double up as dispersion shields fine. And here they are as Lychguard with war scythes. Again, I know they have the void blades as well, but the war scythe is the main weapon, and I think the shield just makes them look pretty cool. Next, it's the Praetorians with void blade and particle casters. Those hands look like small guns with nothing on them, and I think it works really well. However, I was a little concerned with the exposed magnets, as in my experience, paint can come off the exposed magnets over time. So I went back to the drawing board. I found an easy fix. I cut off more front pieces of the new Gauss flayers I had. I then cut off the small side sections and drilled a hole in the back for a magnet to go in them. Actually, the little sticky out section in the middle of the extra piece finishes off the gun nicely. Then lastly we have the Praetorians with the Rod of Covenant, which again, even though they're holding the void blades as well, I think it looks absolutely fine. Warriors converted into Lychguard and Praetorians with all 4 weapon options. Now if you're interested, here is the video where I show you how I magnetized the original kit into both units with all 4 weapon options for you to watch next.